Apologies have a strong role in maintaining the cohesion between parties involved within a conflict. They provide closure to victims and give a chance for the offender to receive forgiveness. However, apologies become slightly complicated when provided over the public domain. With the increase of interest in apologies introduces pseudo-apologies, also known as simulated atonement. Oftentimes, the main differences can be very minute. However, pseudo-apologies lack complete acknowledgement of the offender's actions and commonly minimizes the offense. Despite the disingenuous nature of a pseudo-apology, a new theory suggests these apologies may be more effective in repairing an individual's public image under some circumstances. This is particularly seen when there is the involvement of a third party, which in many cases is the general public. Consequently, offenders provide a flippant apology, often putting their own interests first and appeasing other parties apart from the victims involved. Main reasons why an offender may choose to provide a pseudo-apology over a genuine apology may include inflated egos, concerns about liability, and political factors. To further understand the process of pseudo-apologies, Heide's balance theory proposes a model of when two individuals have an opinion about a subject, they either A, share the same opinion, creating a stronger identification with each other, or they B, share different opinions, and in order to maintain the state of balance, an individual convinces the other individual to share the same opinion and is successful, or C is unsuccessful and introduces a mental balance which causes drifting between them. The more serious a disagreement is, the more strain there is on a relationship. By understanding Heide's balance theory, we deepen our understanding of how apologies work. An offender is automatically associated with the offensive actions, thus logically victims are disassociated with the offense and in turn from the offender. An apology is crucial if the offender chooses to reprimand themselves for their actions, and if is successful in doing so, victims can identify with the offenders again. To understand this theory more, a simple example may be Michael Richards' hate speech directed at African Americans and his poor apology demonstrating the effects of option C, a mental imbalance between him, his victims, and his audience. November 2016, Richards was seen headlining a famous comedy club. Within his act, a pair of African Americans allegedly decided to speak ill of his performance. Richards broke his act and directly replied to the two men within his crowd, cussing derogatory terms and causing some of his audience members to walk out during his performance. Richards attempted to salvage the situation by issuing an apology over the David Letterman show. Although the apology was issued on a timely matter, he could not articulate himself very well and came across as confused within his own deliverance. Richards had degraded an entire race of people, yet failed to properly address this issue. His incomplete apology highlighted his ignorance towards the problem, and he was unable to disassociate himself from his hate talk, and thus unable to associate with his victims nor the general public. This incident had had a tremendous effect on his career, with some speculating he will never be able to recover from this. However, there are situations where the third party does not align with either victim or the offense. This creates an imbalance for the third party when the offender does apologize to the victim. This is where an individual may choose to use a pseudo-apology. Pseudo-apologies are less sincere than genuine apologies. Identification between the offender and the victim is unlikely. Thus, by convincing third parties that the offender is disassociated from an offense, pseudo-apologies make it possible for these third parties to identify with the offender. An example where several qualities of a pseudo-apology was presented was a public apology given by influential radio host Rush Limbaugh. Keeping in mind Rush is very proud of his right-wing morals, and his talk show typically appeals to individuals with similar ideals as him. In 2012, Limbaugh had made derogatory comments about 30-year-old law student Sandra Fluke, as she had testified that health insurance providers should be required to cover contraceptives for women. Limbaugh brought up this testimony on his radio show, calling her a slut, and even going as far as suggesting, well, if we're going to pay for you to have sex, we want something for it. We want you to post the videos online so we can all watch. Shortly after this radio episode, activists called for the boycotting of his show. This led to companies pulling their advertisements during his time slot on the radio and eventually Rush being dropped by his 2 radio stations. In response to this, Rush apologized for his remarks and confessed that he was trying to be humorous. He talks about this incident on his radio show and takes that chance to take a dig at his political opponents. I descended to their level when I used those 2 words to describe Sandra Fluke. That was my era. I became like them, and I feel very bad about that. Lindbergh's attempt at an apology demonstrated obvious implications that he was not truly sorry, and only did because his reputation was in jeopardy. He did not care about his relationship with Fluke. Fluke to this day still does not accept his apology. However, despite her non-approval of his apology, the radio stations have re-signed his contract, and in recent times he was awarded a Presidential Medal of Freedom. And on this note, my question is, should people who have demonstrated characteristics of a pseudo-apology within their apology still deserve to have a platform?